Nights Pontificators. I'm Mark Thibert, and we have the crew here, the Pontificators crew. We have Draken and we have Todd the Wolf. And we are hoping to have Todd Mulrooney sometime soon. He's fallen off the grid. He's fallen off the grid, but we're hoping he can get back on and join us here in a bit. So how have you guys been?
I mean, good. Well, we were here a week ago, and we had a lot of fun there with, we didn't know what we were going to do right off the bat. And we sort of came up with this idea that we were going to talk about, politics and how it involves comic books. We were a little bit slow, and then we just hit into the stretch. We got going. We started having so much fun with this topic and going into so many different directions that I had to bow out because it just got so late.
Yeah, somehow it always picks up, man. Like it starts off like we just kind of, put something out there, just kind of BS a little bit. Then we find our legs, and then, man, things heat up. Like in the first half hour, usually it's just kind of floundering, and then, man, it picks up.
Right. Yeah.
Fun. Yeah, we missed you, man. So I hope everything's okay. Was it
Otherwise, a quick shout out to Goulet Pens. From right here at gouletpens.com. They have just inspired me greatly because I started writing, and we have so many gadgets and digital aids, from my tablet to my word processors and things, that I can do the editing for my writing and whatnot. But to get down the inception of just the story, how it's going to go and flow, I'm not just carrying around a journal book, and I'm writing down pages and dialogue. How the panel is going to be, then what the dialogue is going to be for the characters. Flip the page, keep going on, and I'm writing, by hand. And what I found was, years ago when I was in school, another guy got me into using a fountain pen. So I'm using a fountain pen now. It glides across the page. I mean, you artists, you use ink every day, and we watch you using brush and stuff. Doug Tenaple does that, and it's very interesting. So now I'm inking. For the most part, I'm inking because I'm using black ink right out of a fountain pen. It's been a new experience. It's fun. And
writing with the fountain pen is the best, man. The ink just flows. Yeah, you're probably having a blast, right?
Yes, and so I'm writing. I'm experimenting. I got a couple of different pens with medium nibs and fine nibs and some different ink types. They now have some really good waterproof ink they'll come in these fountain pens as well. So yeah, and I went over and I found a place, Goulet Pens, and of course Goulet has a YouTube, and he's not yet maybe the official pen for Flying Sidecar Press, because I just haven't contacted him. But at some point, I'm just gonna just tell him that, hey, I'm enjoying what they do. Their videos are great, and so I just want to give a quick shout out to Goulet Pens and how much fun I'm having using them while I'm writing. So there you go.
Does it inspire you? Advertisement? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Said this is not an advertisement for Goulet Pens.
It's not an advertisement. Sometimes you have a product that you have just enjoyed so much that you just want to say it out there because you want other people to know, right?
Yes. You want everybody to enjoy the product that you're enjoying.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wanted to start off with a little sad news, and I'm gonna screen share here for a minute, and
you're gonna have to explain who this dude is to me, because I have no idea who he is.
All right. Well, this is one of my all-time heroes since I was a child. His name is Neil Peart, and he was the drummer of Rush, is a progressive hard rock band from Canada. And this guy just majorly took like rock drumming into the next stratosphere, and big inspiration. I'm still trying to figure out how he played some of the, I'm a drummer. I play the drums as well. So I'm still trying to figure out some of the things that he's done in his lifetime. And I know he had a rocky road the last couple years And when I heard this news, it was extra sad. He, a few years back, he lost his wife and his daughter, really close to each other. And so he couldn't really handle things. So what he did is he drove his motorcycle. He got on his motorcycle, and he just drove across the country for a year. He just kind of appeared and just drove across the landscape, trying to get his head straight and try to come to terms with what happened. And so I guess he did keep touch with some of his family members and some of the band, but he didn't really hear, this is where I'm at. It was more or less just like, I'm doing okay, just so they didn't worry, kind of thing. And so after that soul searching, he came back, and I believe they did the Clockwork Angels album, which was, as far as I'm concerned, was amazing. And as far as Neil Peart is concerned, it's some of his best lyrics and some of his best drumming, and it's an amazing album. I really love that album, and you might like this, Durak. And he is, if you were a rock lyricist, you'd probably be this guy, because these aren't like your customary, like sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of lyrics. These are like pretty deep lyrics, and like Red Barchetta is based on a science fiction novel. So there's a lot of stuff like that this guy's pulling from in his lyrical content. So he was way outside of the box. And so I guess around the Clockwork Angels time, he met a lady, and they married, and they had a little one. And so it seemed like things were going pretty good. And I had no idea that this guy has been battling a brain tumor for 3 years. So all through that, the guy had, this brain tumor, and managed to do all that. And then recently it was like he was retired, and the rest of the Rush members were like kind of hush hush, but it must have been like he was starting to get pretty sick, and it was noticeable. So he finally gave into, man, I'm gonna tear up. He finally gave into it, and he passed away. So I just wanted to start that. This is one of my heroes of my past, and at least he went out with his boots on. He put out a killer album before he passed, and R.I.P. Neil Peart. So thank you guys for indulging me. I just wanted to get that off my chest and put that out there. Yeah, I mean, I want it to be more of a celebration. So I've been listening to Rush songs all day, in the studio trying to get work done. So thanks, guys, for indulging me on that. So
certainly, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, DeWolf, do you know who he is?
Yeah, I grew up in an era. Now, for me, I wasn't so much into rock and music where I could always tell you what artist did what music, right? But but my being the eclectic guy that I am, I really listen to all sorts of genres. So in doing so, I've definitely heard Rush and their music and the drumming in there. It's really good. It's amazing. It's good. It's good rock for someone. I did not grow up like enjoying rock,
right?
But hearing Rush, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's great stuff.
Yeah, I think that they definitely thought outside the box, and I use them still to this day as inspiration. Who would have signed these guys? They never really had a hit. They were always under, I guess, under the radar. But yet they had like a 40-year career. They'd sell out arenas, they'd sell albums, but they never really got a lot of airplay or support from the mainstream. So I kind of taken inspiration from that as well, because it's kind of like what we're doing right now,
Right.
Mainstream isn't really supporting us, but like people in the chat and people who really know what cool comics and cool people are hanging out with us. So that's a nod to you guys in the chat. So,
and that's kind of the average career for most people, is that if you even get a slim sort of fame, it's like, you're sort of there, you're sort of not. You might be the best in the world, but you might not get anywhere in general in your job. So
Yeah,
and you
but
just sort of hang out.
Yeah, if you're lucky and you can last long enough, because that's always the thing, man. If you can hold on long enough to establish a following, because sometimes, like you're saying, Durakan, you could be really, really good. I know a lot of good people that just never got a break, and then ended up having to take Joe jobs. And you're just like, yeah, but you're more talented than I am. You know what I mean? Like you scratch your head, like how? But it's fortitude. A lot of it is just carrying on no matter what, until you find that break or until you go long enough to find that crowd that's going to follow you and support what you do. And they were kind of an underground band, even though they're considered mainstream of sorts, but they were kind of underground, not getting a lot of mainstream support. So my hat's off to the band, and we lost another great one. So it's kind of a bummer for me anyway. And I did want to. We have a couple things today, so I thought we'd kind of break things up on Pontificators, and wanted to talk about Ricky Gervais for a while.
Before that, why don't we say hello to everyone in the chat?
Okay, I thought it kind of was, but if you want me to actually shout out, you want to do it? You want to do it, Durakan?
Yeah, let's see if I can go over all the names real quick.
Okay, cool.
Hello, Simonon7, Comic Book Bob, Jalapeno Milk, Wilson Ramos Jr., King Crow, Edwin the Ace Acevedo, Bianca.
What about Victor Thomas?
Fight-
You missed Victor Thomas.
Does Victor Thomas exist?
He says, "Hey, hey." Is that?
He
Are
might
you?
not exist though.
Ooh.
I don't think he exists. I mean, he wasn't there just a second ago.
The mystery Victor Thomas. No, he was there. It says 6:23. Ooh, he's doing time travel. He just bopped in.
Exactly.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hi, Felix Haas. That was directly to you, not to any of us. So I don't know. I shouldn't have said hello to him. The Geek Art, Rhaegar Targaryen, Death Metal Hero, and Perth Comics, and I think that's it. Nope, Nick C. Hello, Nick C.
Yes.
I am not a folk, though.
Can't forget Nick C. Never forget. And then we have Fart Thibert. Who's that? Who's Fart Thibert?
And that's jalapeno milk, of course.
Yeah. I in the chat now they're saying like R. They're like writing R and then T bear. So like RT bear. So that's my code now.
Yeah,
So-
I had such a hard time with your name when I first heard it.
Yeah, it's nothing like it looks like. You would have to know French or be familiar with the names to even be able to figure that out. Because there's always like what is it, like Springsteen and Springstein, and there's like T Bear, but then there's like Qbert, like there's all kinds of weird exceptions.
Well, I thought it was Artie Bear. I was like, I don't understand what you're trying to like write there.
I'm trying to be cute, like, oh, it's Artie Bear. Yeah.
Well, it's a very interesting name. Like, for instance, someone who does not have an interesting name is Mulrooney. That's not interesting. Matter of fact, it's so uninteresting that he's not even here yet.
That was a great segue.
Oh my goodness! I summoned him.
If you say Todd Mulrooney 3 times, he appears.
If you try to insult him,
Sorry.
he appears.
Yeah, so we did a little RIP to Neil Peart. So do you have any Rush stories or Neil Peart? You're an older guy. You're a rock.
I didn't own a lot of Rush. It wasn't like they didn't appeal to me. It just there just were other bands that I started to gravitate towards and different sounds. He was a great drummer, though. By the way, I mean, an awesome drummer.
Yeah. So now we are on Ricky Gervais's Golden Globes. So
hey, you know what though? One quick little thing in here that's going to be applicable is, didn't they have a song Tom Sawyer?
Their biggest hit.
Mark Twain.
So that's going to be relevant later on.
Yes. Store that away, you guys, in your memory banks. We may be coming back to this. That's a good call, DeWolf. Wow. You're early on in this stream. But I thought, I mean, everybody's kind of already put their 2 cents in on the Ricky Gervais Golden Globes. But for me, I just want to really applaud like anybody that's, going to take on the mainstream, in such a fashion. And I thought it was pretty brave. I thought it was pretty right on. And I thought maybe we would spend a little bit of time talking about it and then get into the main topic, which is time travel, best and worst. So should we start with Todd since he just got in?
Well,
Why not
okay, I
start
didn't
with
watch the
Geeky Art?
Golden Globes, so I don't know what Ricky
Okay.
did. But I know he's pretty outspoken about a lot of things.
Okay, I have a little clip. Maybe we'll give everybody a little refresher. I'm not sure how much I can show. I don't know if you can do a clip like this and not get popped on YouTube.
Yeah.
But this is kind of. Can you guys hear this?
Oh,
Can't hear it.
many talented people of colour,
There it goes.
Yeah.
major categories. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that. The Hollywood foreign press are all very, very racist. So, but you all look lovely, all dolled up. You came here in your limos. I came here in a limo tonight, and the license plate was made by Felicity Huffman. So, no.
That is so good, man. Like he is so right on, and he's basically roasting Hollywood. Like they're a captive audience, and he's roasting them. And I think he's basically trying to see, if they can still laugh at themselves, if Hollywood still has a funny bone. So let's keep going.
Judge, once upon a time in Hollywood, nearly 3 hours long, Leonardo DiCaprio attended the premiere, and by the end, his date was too old for him. So,
That's a classic roast.
Yeah, it's so good, man. It is so good.
even Prince Andrew's like, come on, Leo, mate, you're nearly 50, son. Lots of big celebrities here tonight. I mean, legends, icons, yeah? At this table alone, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. Baby Yoda. Oh, no, Joe Pesci, sorry. It was a big year for paedophile movies. Finding R. Kelly, Leaving Neverland, Two Popes. Shut up. I don't care. You can watch the entire first season of Afterlife instead of watching the show. That's a show about a man who wants to kill himself because his wife dies of cancer, and it's still more fun than this. Okay? Spoiler alert, season 2 is on the way, so in the end, he obviously didn't kill himself. Just like Jeffrey Epstein. I know he's your friend, but I don't care.
Oh my God.
I know that. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, man. I paused it.
I mean, really. That's when when he's pointing fingers, right? That's
and also, that's a 1-2 punch, man. That's like a shot to the gut and then an uppercut,
Yeah.
You had to make your own way here, your own plane, didn't you? The world got to see James Corden as a fat pussy. He was also in the movie Cats, but no one saw that. Apple rolled into the TV game with a morning show, a superb drama, a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. So, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award tonight,
there's no laughter.
Yeah. I'm gonna back this up, and then I'll stop it, and then we can move on. But I'm just trying to give some people like reference to what we'll be talking about in case they don't know. Here we go.
So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spend less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God. So
that's pretty much what I wanted to share. Holy shit, right? Like, that's crazy. Man. Yeah, I can't believe he got some of those jabs in, especially like that was the Apple executive, right? That the camera was on when he was talking about
I think
Apple.
so, yeah. And you can tell there was I said the lack of laughter, but it's almost that, okay, I realize this should be funny kind of laughter, and some people were laughing, but the other people were like, ooh, this hits a little bit too close, right?
Yeah, because he was going after Apple and some of the money people as well. So, he was
pedophiles.
basically, just taking a shot at everybody. So I applaud him. And let me go to the super chat. I never watched Golden Globes, but if I had, what a roast it would be. I would have turned in. Gervais absolutely owned the show. Yes, he did. And thank you so much for the $5, the super chat. I do appreciate it. And for me, I'm taking this as a turning point. Like, between him, Dave Chappelle, and a few. What was the other comedian? I can't remember his name now. But they kind of, yes, they took on the establishment. And that's got to be pretty brave because those are the people that sometimes are paying their rent. So
yeah, it's not necessarily new. There has been entertainers for years that have been under the gun from the whole media and the left people, Hollywood in general, because they don't conform to their society, and they don't like what they represent. And what I mean by that is what they represent is some moral high ground. One of these people, and we all know and love them, is John Ratzenberger. Of Cheers from Norm, also from Empire Strikes Back,
and does all the voices for the Pixar movies, right?
And all the voices for Pixar, right?
And Star Wars New Hope.
Yeah. Tim Allen. Tim Allen is another one, right? His show was canceled there for a while, Last Man Standing, and then they kind of did some fighting and pushing, and try to get him back on, and they decided, it's actually worth money because there happens to be a broad section of the viewers that actually like that and are like that, and they would rather want to watch something that has those values.
Yeah, you talk about representation. That's just another faction that has representation, right?
Yeah,
If you're gonna be fair, why not? And even Roseanne on some level,
Roseanne, Chris Pratt, Kevin Sorbo. There's a lot of them who are Christian. Not Chris Pratt. He's got a lot of hate occasionally when they talk about how on Easter he went up and he prayed at a very famous cross area, I think at some point. People don't like that. People don't like it. I mean, Hollywood doesn't like that.
Right.
And they go after these folks and they want to just run them out. And so now Ricky Gervais comes out and he's not a conservative. He's just a loudmouth. He's just telling the truth about things. Yeah.
And like Perth Comics says, that skit was for the audience at home, not for the people in attendance. And exactly, man, exactly. He was playing the audience that was watching on TV, not the room. And then Nick C says, plenty of angry and nervous smiles in the audience. Yeah, the Tom Hanks one is the best. Like his wife is losing her shit. And Tom Hanks, you could see the thought work. Like he's thinking, like, if I laugh, what is this going to do to my career? You know what I mean? What are the headlines tomorrow going to be? And that's a really bad place to be when you can't laugh at something that you genuinely find funny. When somebody's going to crucify you for just laughing. It's pretty weird. We live in a weird time right now.
And it strikes home with us because it's exactly where you came out of, right, Art? When you're talking about the comics industry, the same thing has been happening there.
Yeah, and just the other day, I was on Ethan's stream, and they were making light of what is his name? Who's the guy that? Preston Poulter. And so I don't know Preston. I don't really I don't know anything about him, so I can't even judge him one way or another. But Ro Kabir and even Ethan, they were doing kind of impressions, like a comedian would do, of Preston, his mannerisms and things like that. And I just snickered. I just laughed. And on Twitter, I was kind of like lambasted. And they were like, we thought you were above this, Art. We thought you were, you were better than that and stuff like that. And it's so funny how people took that. But it's kind of like, like you're somewhere and your friend smacks his shin on an end table, right? And just says something funny and makes a funny face. And then you're just like, you just kind of snicker because it strikes you as funny at the moment. You know what I mean? Like, it's not intellectualized. It's not really thought out. You're not kind of making an overall scheme. You're just kind of laughing at the moment. It's kind of like slapstick comedy. And that's all I was doing. And it's kind of amazing how people, they take some of this stuff. So, when somebody like Tom Hanks has to think about it before he laughs, it's not a great place to be.
Yeah. And you're right, Art. What did I just say about Ricky? He told the truth, whether it was funny or not, right? Preston, for instance, you could very easily say that he has mannerisms of a French gentleman of the 1700s, which we would often call that effeminate, but he himself is not effeminate.
Right.
But guess what? That's just the truth. And like him or not, have you watched his videos? I've watched his videos. And that just kind of it's the mannerisms that come out. But then, of course, everything else he says and everything else he does is different from those. You could find something about me to roast as well. Everyone can, because we're people. And you just got to get over something that is trivial versus an attack, like what I just did, right?
Yeah. Well, what was the saying? The saying used to be is like if they're poking fun at you, it's kind of the sincerest form of flattery. So it means that you're striking a nerve, like that you're connecting. So like I said, I don't really know Preston that well. I've never even seen one of his streams, but it just struck me as funny at the moment. So, I'm sorry if anybody took offense to me laughing. Also, I kind of had this jovial, I just laugh all the time anyways.
Yeah, I was actually, I talked to Preston a little bit. I was like, because I saw in one of his things, I'm like, when you laugh, you have this weird thing about your mouth that it's still like going down. So it still looks like you're sort of frowning. It's like, thanks for the self-conscious boost.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I don't know, we kid because we care. I don't know, there's a lot of reasons why people laugh,
If you look at his thumbnails, right, what he picks when you do a video and you want it to show a certain thing, thumbnail within the video, he picks the most funniest look that he's made throughout the video. So he knows that about himself, and he, he's very very smart and articulate, and reads a lot of comics. He's been reading.
It's pretty good production value too. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a gambler.
When we first started working with him at Anycom TV, he was kind of a lightning rod in the sense of bringing us attention, but some of it was negative, and it took me a long time to like watch. It's kind of like a comedian. Like there's gonna be small groups of people he offends. Being a comedian today is like one of the worst things you could possibly be.
Oh,
You're always gonna hear from a small group that almost sounds like a loud group because of social media and stuff like that. So he's kind of like that, and I had to kind of find my perspective with him. And at the end of the day, I realized some of it was shtick, and some of it was just I don't know what to call it, like not just stick, but it was like he was poking the bear for fun. You know what I mean? So there was shtick in there, and there was some personal. I'm gonna do this every day. I'm gonna poke at a bear.
Yeah, and I think that becomes intriguing and fun because you never know, if the guy's being sincere or not, and that's
Right.
kind of fun. Yeah. So, do you guys want to get into some fun and start talking about time travel, best to worst?
Yeah.
All right. So this comes from Durakin. We were going to talk about this last week. So we'll talk about it this week. So we did a little bit of searching before we went live, and we thought it would be fun to kind of give you a little bit of history, or maybe what came first as far as time travel, and then we're getting it. Oh, you have some other ones too.
No,
but
chicken came first.
the chicken came first. Oh, I thought you said Dickens.
I'm not going there.
That chicken Dickens. It's chicken licking Dickens. But yeah. So what did we come to the consensus of? Because I said Connecticut Yankee was possibly the first kind of time travel story. And then what did you say, DeWolf? Did you say H.G. Wells' Time Machine?
Oh, yeah. Well, Time Machine. Rip Van Winkle.
Oh, that was it. Rip Van Winkle. Did we ever?
Time-ish?
What was the year on Rip Van Winkle? Because I don't have it written down here.
It's 1819. Yeah, we were talking. I was getting into the history of it, and it's like a lot of mythology has where characters jump out of time and then come back in the future. So that's forward time travel. The first time in fiction it comes up is a French play by Laon 2440, Rives Ciel and to Jamai in 1770. But after that, it's Rip Van Winkle and is obviously more known. And that's still forward in time. The first one that actually starts going back in time is probably what was the guy's name?
Was it?
It's this
H.G.
anonymous
Wells' The Time
author.
Machine?
No, it was an anonymous author, or something called The Forebears Calameros Alexander, son of Philip the Macedon, by Alexander Vellman.
Well, can we agree that the first big would be a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which was Mark Twain, and that was what was that? 1889? No, it was.
No, it was Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. That's the first time it goes back in time.
1843. Yeah. Yeah,
but the big one that like solidified time travel is H.G. Wells.
1895. So yeah.
Well, and see, the interesting thing about A Christmas Carol was he wasn't actually there.
Wait. Did you say Dickens was first?
Yeah.
No,
Dickens came out in 1843.
Connecticut Yankee was 1838.
Really?
Yeah, it was 1838.
So it was before Dickens.
So A Christmas Carol, though, let's kind of hash some things out here, because A Christmas Carol, though he went back in time and he got to view the past Christmas and go forward to see what was going to happen in other Christmases, he could not interact. He was just viewing things that had happened before or were going to. So that's different in some senses of most time travel stories that we get into today. You physically are there and you can interact physically with them versus just being an observer, right?
That's true. Yeah. Christmas Carol, he could not interact, so he was just he was witnessing. Yeah. What was going on. But like Time Machine, he was a participant. There was an adventure that happened, and even Connecticut Yankee, he was a participant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very interesting, man. So that kind of gives a little bit of history on like the birth of these time travel stories. So personally, my favorite is Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. I do like the Time Machine as well, but I think I like Dickens' story the best. How about you guys? Out of all those,
out of just those, I want H.G. Wells, but I always feel it's incomplete. The Time Machine.
Yeah, it seems like it should be serialized, huh?
Yeah, it's like I always want them to explore the worlds that he goes to with the Morlocks and all like that.
Morlocks, yeah.
He gets caught up with a girl, that's why.
He wants to settle down.
You know, he
Yeah.
finds a girl, and then he gets wrapped up in her. See, for me, I think it is a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, because you have a guy there who has the epitome of his world's science at his fingertips, and when he goes back, he's a magician while he's there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's very fun and very interesting. And another thing I'm going to sort of segue a little bit differently here is, imagine now you are these guys in the 1800s and you are coming up with these stories of time travel, because what's that word they use, zeitgeist, where people are talking about a movement or a concept, right? So there was a form of zeitgeist within certain, I guess, writers or philosophies, and time was something now that was being talked about. And here you have the 1800s, and today we have so many tropes that as soon as you say time travel, people start thinking about movies and this, that, and the other. They didn't have a huge wealth of things like that. Maybe, like Draken said, there was some ancient things or some stories about gods or people being swept away by the gods. But for the most part, they're creating concepts themselves and having to invent the what ifs of what happens with time travel, even in the time frame of the 1800s.
Yeah, and like a time machine, they're making up technology as well. You know,
Right.
First, can we establish whether you believe it's possible?
Oh no, you're taking it a whole new direction.
I don't think we should go there.
Theoretically, it is, but yeah.
It depends on what you actually mean by time travel. Because there's parallel dimension time travel. There's like single timeline time travel. There's do you count time travel into the future as time travel? And that is definitely possible. But can you also time travel in the past, which is a completely different thing? There's also like causality, cyclical causality time travel, which isn't really time travel if you really think about it. I mean, you get to go in the past, but you don't really alter anything, so it doesn't really matter.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. So Draken here starts going on all of these different things and these concepts. You'll notice that the 1800 guys, they don't have any of these concepts. For the most part, they have a singular timeline. And if something happens, this whole dimensional theory stuff, they didn't have. So they have one singular backwards and forwards,
That's the interesting part of it, is that H.G. Wells was actually up on all the recent science, and he's like an earlier Isaac Asimov in a way. He actually went to all the scientists, and he was part of their groups and talked to them. And around this time, it was first being popularized that the fourth dimension is time travel, and that's where his idea started coming from. And why he thought you could time travel.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's where the impetus for the story came from.
I like the simple superhero one where if you fly either forward, or backwards fast enough, you'll eventually end up in the past or the future.
That's also a Star Trek.
Yeah.
If you're playing around the sun fast enough, you'll time travel.
Exactly. You'll go back a day, an hour, or an hour a day, a month, a year, kind of thing.
Yeah, those are theoretically correct. It's just we can't get up to those speeds.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's where I think, the realistic aspects of time travel would be you'd have to be traveling in space, right? As far as time travel in a stationary sense, until you build the machine that can, like a stationary machine that can bend time and space, you wouldn't be able to go past its invention. Do you understand that?
Yeah,
that's one of the ideas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting, and so I think we've done a good job of establishing like a foundation on all this time travel stuff and how it came about and things, especially how it affected storytelling and pop culture. So you guys want to do some present day stuff, just some fun stuff, and start getting into maybe some of the best and worst of pop culture time travel?
Well, first, are we talking about time travel in the sense that it's the major part of the story, or is it just like it's in there but it's not really important? For example, Predestination, it's all about the time travel aspect, and that's the entire point of the story. Whereas maybe something like
The Terminator?
yeah, Terminators, it's just something that's there, but it's not really affecting the story all that much.
Okay.
Like Back to the Future, on the other hand, is about time travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we consider both time travel movies, or is one time
Yes.
travel and not the other?
It has time travel in it. We have to consider it.
Yeah, I agree. How about you, Todd? You agree?
Yeah, I agree. Want me to tell you my favorite?
Yes, do it.
Okay, so
Do it.
I was always a deep thinking kind of kid growing up, and I also explored different music. Not the music that was being played, because in my household, my mother listened to like the Carpenters and stuff. So I always was exploring different types of music that wasn't going on in my house. So I fell in love with a movie. It's called Somewhere in Time, and it's Christopher Reeve is in it, and the music that is strewn throughout the movie is Rachmaninoff, whose music is just amazing. As far as classical music goes, it's very it's a little bit different than the others, what you would call like Renaissance composers, or not Renaissance composers. I forget the word I'm looking for, but his music is all throughout the whole movie. It was just a really incredible movie. Has anyone seen it?
Yes. It's more of a romantic story, right?
Right, it is.
Jane Seymour, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
Oh, Jane Seymour. Huh.
She was hot.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah.
The idea of the movie is he sees somebody in his present. No, he doesn't see her first. Oh man, I haven't watched it in a couple of years. But he basically travels to meet somebody. Oh yeah, he does see her in the present, right? Because she comes to like his play or something and says something to him, and he figures out who she was, and he figures out a way to time travel. And it's more like remote viewing time traveling.
Okay.
I wouldn't call it like, I don't know if he, like, was he physically there, or was he viewing that he was there? I know it's not.
Really? So they leave you.
No. You're not left. It's just not explained.
Right, that's what I was going to say. They leave you with not really knowing for sure. But wasn't there like a photograph or something? There was some kind of hard proof, wasn't there?
In the end, yeah, there was a photograph of him at that hotel with her that he sees in like the last closing moments.
Okay, D Geek Art agrees. Somewhere in Time was one of my husband's favorites. So thank you, D Geek Art. I appreciate that. Yeah. So keep going. Yeah. When did that was like in the 70s or early 80s, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an older one.
70s. It's pre
Before Superman broke his neck.
Before Superman broke it. Yeah, thanks for that, man. R.I.P. Christopher Reeve. This is becoming the Dead Heroes stream.
So I want to liven it back up again and go over to Back to the Future. Now, there's a lot of critical parts, about Back to the Future, but when it came out, right, I was enthralled in it. One of the reasons why is just from the production value, because you knew at the end of the first movie there was a second one coming, and they were going back to the future. And he says it, and so to me that captured my interest and my imagination of what their time travel was. All of a sudden, you now had the DeLorean is now flying, and something happened with it. You don't know what, and they're going to go back, and you're kind of going to find out how and why that all happened, which you knew that the Doc was gone for an extended period of time, and then he came back to that very instance where he dropped him back off again.
Right.
So And I think in that particular case, because of that, the storytelling aspects of how Back to the Future uses time travel, and all through the next movies, there's constantly this twisting or layering of what time travel, how it's being used, because you have him digging up, I think, the note and the picture or whatever that is of the gravestone, and then so that's when he figures out, oh, he's got to go back to the 1800s, right? But of course he's in the future, so the information from the 1800s traveled forward in time at 1 second per second until it got to Marty, and of course he then has to turn around and go back to the 1800s again, right? And so that level of time travel, because the one person went into the past and the guy in the future, I think for me that was one of the most fun time travel movies, and really kind of set the stage of what time travel, how it can be effective in a story, and how you have to think about a story and what time loops can mean. Because the other movie that came out at that time was The Terminator. And what they did with time loops is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, but like I totally agree with you, DeWolf. Let me go off on a tangent real quick, because Bogus Fortune is right. It is 1889. So I think I'm the one who said what did I say, 1838. So yes, it is that. So I just wanted to let Bogus know, and the rest of the chat. But yeah, I think the genius of Back to the Future is that I've watched those things, and I like time travel movies because I watch them and rewatch them to see if the logic of the time travel works. You know what I mean? If everything kind of works within whatever the reality that they set up for the 2-hour adventure. And that trilogy not only does that, but also they keep it fun, man. I mean, it doesn't feel like you're getting bogged down with science or a theory of time travel. They establish the rules really quickly and then just move on with it. And it just becomes like a really fun adventure versus, anything that you have to think too heavy about, the time travel part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the best time travel movie is definitely Bill and Ted.
That was
okay.
Man, that was a good pull. Yeah. You want to talk about that a little bit?
I don't remember much of it, but it's a pretty cool thing. It
was educational too, right?
Yeah, the with Socrates and all like that.
I don't think Billy the Kid would have been as nice as he was in that. I think Billy probably would have killed them and stole their wallets. Go ahead.
Oh, the only thing that I remember is that they were trying to find. What's the story about, actually? Is that they had to write a paper?
Yeah, they had to write a school report on these famous people. And so they didn't have a clue. So then they basically get to meet all these guys. And then they figure out like history and the historical significance of these individuals by meeting them firsthand.
Yeah, and that's really cool, because then it teaches them that in the future that they're actually important. And they started their importance with this report, which is really odd.
Yeah.
So yeah. It creates a predestination paradox sort of in there, which they never actually talk about. Well, they talk about near the end, where they're like, all we have to do is remember that we moved the key later on, so that when we are here now, it's there then.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, the first time travel things that I ever remember seeing was like the old, the really, the older Time Machine, the H.G. Wells, Time Machine movie. But the one that had even greater impact on me was the Planet of the Apes, because and also from what I heard, they didn't even really have a master plan. You talk about just genius writing and just writers building on other writers' work, opposed to like this Star Wars trilogy, which it seemed like everybody was just fighting against everybody else. That original Planet of the Apes, those storylines actually work. They all work within the confines of the overall time travel story. And a lot of people don't think about it as a time travel story, but it kind of is, right?
Oh,
Do
it
you
sure is,
take it
yeah.
as time travel?
What's that?
Do you take it as time travel, or do you take it as something else?
I think of it as personally, I think of it as a time travel story.
Can I tell you that it's not time travel?
It's an alternate reality story.
No,
right?
it's not alternate reality.
What is
It's
it?
actually another planet. That was what the original book says.
The original book, but not the movies, because the movies is saying that it's Earth because there's the Statue of Liberty at that site, and also all those weapons, those guns, and all that stuff. That's why Dr. Zaius had such a mad on for human beings, because he knew that they set off the nuke. They nuked the planet, and that the apes were strong enough to survive it and rise up and build off of the humans left them.
And that was the 60s, so it was a trope. I think I used that word earlier. No, that's wrong. It was an idea. It was an idea that came from the Cold War, and the fact that we were going to destroy the planet using nukes and everything else. And so it was a commentary on the Cold War, but using time travel to go into the future and see what could happen with a society and all.
What if Planet of the Apes is the beginning story of the Matrix, and that's the actual reality?
Well, if you think about a lot of stuff did, like cinematic things did come out of the Planet of the Apes storylines. Like even like Terminator. A lot of those ideas, I think, stemmed from those movies. Not so much the book, you're right, but the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's probably one of the best movies that people don't consider time travel is Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, that's a good.
But it's definitely time travel.
You know what else is like Idiocracy? Is that kind of a time travel story? Is that like kind of a Rip Van Winkle? Yeah. Hey, let me read this super chat real quick because these things get away from me. D Geek Art again. Thank you so much. Things is in the Doctor Who Van Gogh episode as well, but beautifully done and explained. I think it's my favorite time travel moment. I don't really watch Doctor Who. Do you guys have a comment on this?
Where's the comment?
It's up on the screen. Predestination thing is in the Doctor Who Van Gogh episode.
Oh yeah, the Van Gogh episode was really cool. He goes back in time and he brings Van Gogh, and he meets Van Gogh, and he tries to get them all happy, and like he's still sad, but to try to make him understand that his life is worth something, he brings him to the future and shows him that he's remembered and he's cherished, and all his artwork is like considered some of the best art ever. But then he finds out that he kills himself in the thing, and he goes back in time, and it maintains the timeline.
Oh my gosh,
that is
pretty cool. Yeah.
That's always interesting, because how do you make a story sometimes where you set up something and then you're going to use time travel to change it? And for me, I think it's more interesting when you see a writer able to do that, where the ending has already been planned out from the beginning of the movie or the story, and all those particular changes are already done. And I was talking to another artist about how to do that using art, because in a normal prose written work, the reader gets every word that you write down. Where if you use a comic book, you can include things that have been changed through the time travel in the artwork and the backgrounds. And the reader has to go back all the way to the front of the book and look in the backgrounds to see what's in the artwork, to understand how time travel has changed things from the beginning of the whole thing in the first place, which you can do with artwork, because most of us aren't getting all the information of the details of what an artist can put on the page until you know the ending, and then you go back and you find these things out.
Yeah. So how about you, Todd? Do you have another movie that you'd like to throw into the mix here?
Well, I have one that I have to
I've
add.
been watching. What's it called? Man in the High Castle.
High Castle, yeah.
Right, and that is a bit of a time travel, because there's the guy, the Japanese guy who does. Well, he can. I don't know if it's time travel as much as his parallel universe travel, but he has the ability to step between the different timelines that have been, juxtaposed to each other, right?
Right.
And I just started watching it. Now, when I first heard about this show, I don't know where I got this idea that it was like Kelsey Grammer, and it was like one of those billionaires or Suits kind of show, like he was a lawyer or something. I never knew this was this type of show that it is, and it basically you're set up with this idea that we lost the war, and of course the Germans won, and the Japanese won too. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And it's really different. It's very tricky stuff. So I've been watching that, and that's pretty cool.
So this is funny. Nick C., I remember, I seem to remember artworking on DC Comics Time Masters. Yes, that was one of my first big series. So it was an 8-issue maxi series, I think they called them in the day. And that's all about DC time travel with Rip Hunter. And that Worlds of Tomorrow, is that the CW show? That is loosely based on that series, that comic book series, because I think they call those characters Time Masters in that series. So yeah, I have a little history with time travel and with chrono mechanics as well. So there's
really?
There's a little aside there, a little self-serving aside.
Now, we can't go without saying anything about one of the bigger phenomenons that happened with time travel and Heroes. That is Heroes.
The TV series there's time travel in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Save the cheerleader, save the world. That's where that comes from.
Oh, okay.
The Japanese guy can move around through time and stuff.
Was that a good series? Everybody told me it was good. I watched the first couple episodes. I know it was Jeff Loeb, and I was just like, this just seems like a X-Men ripoff. Like I couldn't really get into it because it felt like this guy was just hijacking comic book ideas for the small screen, and for some reason I had a problem with that at the time.
It was good, but it suffered from the fact that what they were going to do is they were going to go with the first season is going to be all one story, and then the second season was going to be a whole different series, pretty much, and they were going to keep on doing that. But the first season was so good that the producers were like, no, you have to continue on with these characters. So it kind of screwed them up. And then they got canceled because at some point they just couldn't maintain how good it was. And they kept on messing it up with because of the time travel in there. It didn't make much sense after a while.
It's hard. It would be hard to do a time travel story as a serialized, because you would always be tempted to rewrite the rules or you would be contradicting the rules that you set up. That's why I think like the Terminator doesn't work as an ongoing, because or even Back to the Future, which DeWolf brought up, is they work really well in the confines of those like 2-hour adventures. But if you were to try to build off that in any way, I think it would be really tough. Because they did a Terminator TV show, and they were able to move back and forth through time, and they were just breaking all the rules and everything, and it just became a cluster F, man.
Yeah, there are certain things that you really don't want to mess with if you're going with an ongoing thing. One of them's time travel, and the other one is rogue types powers, where you can just absorb powers.
Yeah,
because that really gets you overpowered really quickly. And Heroes had both of those, and they were both major characters, so they couldn't really do anything with other than like try to depower them every single chance that they got, and it became kind of dumb.
Yeah, because that's all you can do. Otherwise, you're going to be contradicting things and doing, stupid, coming up with stupid ideas. And let me, I always have to read these super chats because they get behind. So I apologize that I'm kind of interrupting you guys, but I do appreciate it. And so Bogus Fortune says $10. Yes, thank you. Planet of the Apes was less time travel than suspended animation. But that's kind of the Rip Van Winkle idea, though. They were supposed to sleep between Earth and the target planet. They survived. 3 survived, 1 died when her suspension tube malfunctioned. Yeah, but it's kind of like he is traveling through time just by the suspension, or
Well,
not.
You have to throw in there with Planet of the Apes, though. They go forward in time, but then as things progress, the later movies have the apes
Going
are
back.
able to go back in time.
Yes.
And then they corrupt the timeline, if you will, and everything that they learn, about what's going on, and they try to teach people things different and whatnot, So there is some time travel aspect, of course, and of course, once again, now you get into that loop thing, like what the Terminator has, and what Art was saying earlier about if you have time travel as something you can constantly do, and I think this is where the Avengers in game, where all of a sudden there's that level of disbelief that you just go, okay, fine, whatever, because when you're able to do time travel at any time, then it breaks the story. Art was saying that about Back to the Future. If you do it one time, then you know that you can only go through once. You only make one loop. You make one change, and then you keep on going. And there's the rest of your life, and things are just done. But if it's a power you constantly have, then you can go back and change something. And then if you didn't like that, you go and change it again. And then you can go change it again. And now it's no longer even an interesting story anymore, because there's nothing final. There's no payoff in the end, because you can change the end again.
Yeah, you can just change it. You can just keep changing it, so nothing has any significance to it. Even death becomes trivial in that type of time travel story.
Yeah, significance. Good word, Art.
Yeah, so I agree. Man, you guys you're making my day. Liam Gray says you need a set finish point, something you will not compromise. Without that, any time travel story will destroy itself, because you need stakes, consequence to hold on to an audience. Yes, I completely agree. And since DeWolf brought this up, and kind of adding to Liam's comment here, Marvel's Endgame. Do you guys want to go off on a tangent here? And I predict doom and gloom on the Marvel Universe, because I think they've written themselves into a major conundrum with the Endgame ideas. But what do you guys have to say?
Oh, they didn't. They had the they sort of did, but they sort of didn't, because the reason why they can't do it as much anymore is because what's his name? The Atom? No, not the Atom.
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man. It's based on his powers, and his powers are limited by his fuel. So
yeah, but they can go to the quantum realm, and they can time travel through the quantum realm, and the quantum realm is just like a macroverse or microverse that he can visit. So if he traveled through time through the whatever they called the quantum realm, which was a bullshit idea, I thought, because it really is like the macroverse or something like that, but they changed it just so they could do the Endgame story line, which is time travel, the quantum verse. Well, which I thought was a cheap shot, just so they can get the time travel aspects in there. But go ahead.
I think they understand this. Well, okay, if I understand what Marvel MCU has been able to do in the past, because we don't know where they're going to go now, and there's a lot of up in the air, and we speculate a lot. But so I'm gonna take the best possibility that they know what they're doing and it's going to all make sense in coming in the future. So looking at it from those positive viewpoints, those positive eyes, I think what's going to happen is they're going to allow Endgame to be the only real time travel story that changed things the way it did. Maybe there'll be somebody that does something very subtle here and there, like Doctor Strange or something. Because what I think the way to do that is to say we can't do time travel anymore because of the constant repercussions, and the repercussions are going to become galactic. And I think that's where you get more of these gods, more of these bigger enemies, because there has to be something that controls the time story. And the way to do that is to bring in a control. If he can constantly go into the quantum zone, like you say, Art, and do it, then what stops him from doing it? So there has to be something that stops him, and I don't think it's going to be himself or a limit on the power or the technology. I think the limit is going to come from a galactic thing, and they're going to understand. Like Doctor Strange will be one of these people, or maybe the Scarlet Witch, the way the Scarlet Witch powers, and if she works with, because we know that later on, Scarlet Witch in the comics becomes super powerful. If that kind of thing happens and they get concerned with it, then they'll keep their power and their ability to do time travel a lot more under lock and key.
Yeah, but
they might need something that is already explained in Endgame, where when you travel back in time, what you're doing is you're creating other universes from that point. And when you mess with something like taking the Infinity Gem out of that universe, you're actually you're opening it up to bigger forces attacking that universe. It becomes darker because the power that is needed to protect that universe is now gone.
Right, but the thing is, like from a more practical storytelling standpoint, they're expecting, like all of us, to just forget that time travel existed, right? Like, okay, Endgame, they did it, and then we're all supposed to just go, oh, time travel doesn't exist in the Marvel universe anymore. So then they're just going to go in a different direction and hope that we kind of move past this quickly and don't think too much about it. But my thought is, once you bring it up in an ongoing scenario like the Marvel universe is, serialized movies, wouldn't it always then become the topic of discussion? Because just think about it, in our world, if time travel existed, holy crap, man, like just the moral dilemmas and just the cluster F that it would create. Like I'm one of those kind of sci-fi, like cautionary tale guys. Like I love those stories. I don't ever want time travel to exist. I don't even think we should. It's not even a worthy pursuit, because all of reality, all of our world would just be so trivial. Life would lose meaning. It would be the worst, innovation or creation that man could ever do, because I think then we would just be doomed as a species, and then life would lose all meaning.
You mean like Steve Rogers? That's what happened with Steve Rogers. Once we saw that, we all just said, well, right?
Yeah. It's like, well, he got his happy ending. That ends one storyline, but then we're left with like a billion other ideas. Like Durakin said, different realities, but yeah, different realities. But now, which reality are we watching on screen? Like they already, what was it, Homecoming, Spider-Man? They delved into, like, there were ripple effects, and there were people that remembered before the big snap. So there were people that realized that things had changed. The world had fundamentally changed. Like this is on a World War III kind of epic scale. Like this would change all existence. You know what I mean? Like every normal human being. I know I'm bringing too much reality to the Marvel universe, but in a realistic way, if something like this did happen, it would be pretty naive to think that it wouldn't fundamentally change everybody's points of view on life.
Oh yeah.
We can go to the universe that is sort of messed up with time travel, where it's kind of hard to progress. And it's Star Trek. You get to the 24th century and everything's cool. We can still tell stories. The 25th century, you're getting a little bit harder to tell stories. And then you get to the 26th century and beyond, and you look at that time period of like where Star Trek is and all like that. The only thing you have is the Quantum War or whatever it's called, where there's a bunch of factions of time travelers fighting with each other, erasing histories and bringing them back and making sure it's the same. And there's that happening. But if you go beyond that, it's like, well, at some point, you can't tell stories anymore because it's just they're messing with time. That's all it is. It's just there's no consequences there because all of it is just whatever the winner has already decided, and those winners already exist in the future.
Right.
So there's no point going on beyond that, and you can't tell stories at that point because nothing matters. There's no change there, and story is all about change.
Well, I think what Endgame did, though, when they tried to explain it differently than every other movie, was that everything does have a consequence. And even though they went back in time, they were going back in, I think you said different dimension or different timeline, or you break it off. But then they say that they could come back together again. So they tried to make it to where you never actually went back in time to a loop because everything that happened in the past was still in the past. So they tried to invent sort of a new way of looking at time travel as well.
Yeah,
well, no, it's there's the thing. There's divergent timelines and converging timelines, and what they were talking about is when they go in the past, you split off these different universes because you're taking out the Infinity Gem, but you can reconverge them by adding the Infinity Gem back, but they don't do that because Steve Rogers is an idiot apparently, and so you got a bunch of diverging universes now, but you can bring them back together if you can create a event where it will bring that universe back in line. So it'll create a little like not a loop, but a like little area where it's separated a little bit, but then it comes right back into the main timeline.
A little fork in the road, then it comes back together again.
Yeah, well, this is exactly what we're talking about. It just becomes like you think like the average movie-going audience is going to be able to like work through this stuff. I just think it definitely writes them into a corner. And Wilson Ramos Jr. says like that he thought that the machine had blown up when the Avengers HQ did. But the thing is, can't they still travel through time in the quantum realm? Like, isn't time travel still possible through that?
Yeah, there's still ways to do it. So
Steve did it at the end.
Yeah, and Steve did it at the end after the machine had blown up. So I don't know. I don't think that's a definitive answer either. Yeah, Wilson, and they could build it again. That's true.
Wilson is a very good example of what all audience members have had to do because of this, and that is try to understand it for themselves.
Yes.
And you don't always want your audience to do that. Now, some movies are generally made so that the audience comes into a story like that, and you want them to take their interpretation of it. That's great. This one, I don't think it's designed for that. And when we have to, it hurts the story.
Yeah, and I think the Marvel Universe is just going to move on from here. I don't think they're going to revisit this really at all. At least no time, they would wait for the next, what do they call it, phase to get back into this, because I think they just want to forget it and then just move forward. But you guys want to keep going because
can I say what I think this gives them an opportunity. There were actors that wanted to leave, and they gave them their exit, right?
Yes.
But this also gives them the opportunity. You guys seem to be the only movies being made, so I'd like to do one more, and it gives them that ability to do that.
Yeah, and I thought that it really felt like the movie felt a lot like two different movies. It felt like a movie that we were saying farewell to two beloved characters, and so a lot of the time travel was basically just designed for that. They didn't have to end it like that. They didn't have to tell that story, but I believe the reason they told that story is so that they could have Tony and especially Tony and Steve Rogers go back in time and try to give them a happy ever after, because they both kind of paid a pretty hefty price and had a lot of unfinished business and lessons to be learned. Thor wasn't as much, he lost his mom, but we all kind of lose family members, kind of thing. So it wasn't quite as tragic as those guys, or as in depth as those guys.
Two things. The
Yeah.
best time travel story is actually Chrono Trigger. It's a video game, and you guys should play it if you haven't. Just wanted to mention that, since I doubt anyone else probably here plays.
Yeah, I want to get into like TV and other things as well, but I want to throw out my favorite time travel stories, which like movies, which I haven't really got into. Planet of the Apes was just kind of throwing it out there, but my favorite is 12 Monkeys and Time Bandits, and they both kind of run neck and neck, and they're both Terry Gilliam films. But 12 Monkeys is God, it's so it's just so perfect, man. I've watched it several times, and all the time travel stuff, it works pretty flawlessly. It's all really self-contained, and I just really like the story.
Now I'm going to ruin it for you. It's actually part of a trilogy, and there's a TV series
based on the 12 Monkeys.
Yeah.
No. How do they? How long has it been going?
I think it might be over now, but it was a few seasons long. And there's a trilogy of movies. I think it's Brazil and Pi. No, Zero Theorem. That are the other two movies that are in that trilogy.
So did you see the 12 Monkeys serialized stories?
It was a pretty good series, the TV show.
Well, I'm gonna have to. Who put that out? Was that Netflix or?
No, it was I think it was ABC or CBS or something like that.
Oh, it was for No, it was not for
ABC. I think it was on Sci-Fi. It wasn't on the ABC.
Yeah, there's no way ABC would get into that.
TNT or USA or Sci-Fi.
Okay, I'll look that up, because
I know it wasn't Sci-Fi. So
yeah, do they get into the time travel aspects, or do they just stay in one reality, like the future? Or the...
Yeah, they go into the time travel aspects. I lost track of it, so I stopped watching it. But everything that I saw up until the point, it was a very good story, what they were telling.
Okay, Victor says it's a Sci-Fi channel. I'll look that up, because I really like that storyline. And then Time Bandits is just a ton of fun. And I was on Adam Friended's show the other day, and he said Chrono Mechanics reminds me a lot of Time Bandits. I said, no. Why would? He goes, those guys were like average Joes. They were just like workers. And I said they were like underlings of that guy. He says, no, they were kind of like workers. And I said, you never got to see them work on anything or build anything. He said, yeah, but it was implied that they were like, like building things and stuff for the overlord or the god type character. And after he said that, I started thinking back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's right. How you create things, and subconsciously, there's things that you like. And I guess I was pulling from that, and I didn't even realize it.
So I need to I want to wrap my brain around 12 Monkeys for a second, because if I'm correct, there was a great, I'm just going to say a cataclysm of some form or fashion, and they send the character back in time to find out how or why this happened, so that they can fix it, right?
So they can prevent from happening.
But if I'm correct, there's for some reason he only has so much time to be there, and they have to pull him back, and then if he didn't finish the job, they have to keep sending him back in time in little pieces, right?
Yeah, because he doesn't know and they don't know, so it's kind of unlocking a mystery. So it's a time travel mystery. So this one character Bruce Willis just keeps going back and he gets fragments. And the best, spoiler alert, you guys, is that the 12 monkeys doesn't mean anything. It was just some kind of bullshit, like rich kids acting out like terrorist organization. And they just spray painted it all throughout this area. And so in the future, they thought they were some kind of terrorist group, but it was really just like 3 or 4 punk kids kind of, just trying to be, cool, I guess. And so, but then that leads to the ultimate story, because you realize that there was a connection with Brad Pitt's character it leads to the eventual villain of the piece. And so, and like you said, Bruce Willis can only go back for so many minutes or so many hours because of the limitations of the time travel story.
Yeah, I think something that comes to mind from that, and then I want to go back to your Time Bandits, is Edge of Tomorrow, which is also a lot like Groundhog Day. So in those two, especially Groundhog Day, right? He's got to he goes through his day and then gets shoved back to the beginning of the day because there's something he has to fix, and they never tell you what. Like it's a cosmic entity, it's God or something, that karma that says you just need to be a better person by the end of this day. And Edge of Tomorrow, it's almost like a save game experience in a video game where when he dies, if he dies, and because the aliens are using time travel to always win, so he has this ability to
that's the Tom Cruise
back
movie, right?
to what?
I'm sorry, that's the Tom Cruise movie, right? I'm sorry,
that's Tom Cruise, yeah.
Okay.
So if he dies, he then jumps back to a certain point and has to try to fix the timeline. And then if he dies because of this time effect, he goes back to sort of like a save to start over until he gets it right. And
and the manga is a little bit more
12 Monkeys, though, that one's interesting. Well, yeah, and see, those are different types of time. Monkeys, that's what the reverse of that, because now they're going back in time, a piece at a time, to fix something in the past instead of forward and backwards.
Right. Right. It's like trying to figure out how we got here. You know what I mean? So it's going back and trying to figure out how we got here, because the records and everything in this Holocaust or whatever it was, there were no records really saved, and no one really had any understanding of how we got here. So that's why they had to go back and piece this thing together. It's really good. And then he falls in love.
It's a dystopian, it's like right in the future.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely apocalyptic. Yeah. So those are my two. So, Durakan, did you have a favorite? Did you throw out a favorite?
Yeah, like I said, my favorite time travel thing is actually Chrono Trigger.
But I mean, movie-wise.
Stuff that you probably haven't heard of. Frequently asked questions about time travel, and there's a movie called 7 Minutes Ago, I think it's called. Both are like really unknown. 7 Minutes Ago, what they do is they're having a party, and this guy keeps on showing up, and he's like, "You got to change your ways. You got to do this," and then he just disappears, and he keeps on like having to find stuff like every time he appears during the party, and he keeps on changing his story. It's like, what the heck is going on? And then at the very end, during the credits, you see it like in his perspective, and it's all like linear. So now everything makes sense.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And frequently asked questions about time travel is pretty much there's these 3 guys that go to a pub, and things start randomly sort of happening. And one of them goes to the bathroom, and he comes back, and he's gone back in time like 3 minutes. And then he's like, what the heck? And so then he goes back into the bathroom, and he comes back out, and something else has changed. And it's a different point in time. And it keeps on happening over and over and over. And then they go to like They go into the future, they go into the past, and they return eventually to the pub.
Wow, that sounds fun. It sounds like exhausting for that character and just mind blowing, but it sounds like a lot of fun to watch. Hey, have you guys? We have Perth Comics says Free Jack is my jam. I kind of remember Free Jack, but do you guys remember the plot of Free Jack? So you can remind us.
Mm-mm.
No, the only thing I know about like anything considered like Jack is the game where you jack into other people's consciousnesses. That's all I can think of.
No, gosh. For some reason, Free Jack. When did it come out? Perth, give us a little bit of insight on. Because Sheldon also says Free Jack was killer. Because if it's the movie, I'm thinking, give me the stars in the movie, because and the year, and maybe I can comment on it if it's the same movie I'm thinking of. But so DeWolf, yours was the Back to the Future trilogy, is that?
Just because of its simplicity and because of the time frame that. But I remember Time Bandits. It was also back in that time frame of the '80s, but weren't they jumping through time just to try to escape some sort of cosmic Satan guy?
No, what they did is it was very work oriented, and this is why I didn't think about Chrono Mechanics, is because those guys, the little guys, they're disgruntled employees of this like great being, and so the thing is, they felt like they were underpaid and abused. And so what they did, since they kind of helped create the universe or time, they knew where these loopholes were, because when they built this universe or time, they did it so fast and on a budget that there were these time loopholes.
They had a map,
Yeah, they had a map. And so they were just they knew where all these loopholes were because they helped create or build all this stuff. They didn't really get into the details of how they built. Like Chrono Mechanics gets into the details of how they repaired the machine and stuff like that. But this one really didn't. And that's why I think I didn't make the parallel. And Adam Friend, hipped me to it. But yeah, I mean, it's hilarious that they have all these little loopholes, and all these little guys want to do is get back at their boss. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't pay us enough and whatever, so we're going to go steal all these riches throughout time, so that can better our existence. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And it was great. It was great watching Billy Barty and all those other, famous little guys play those roles.
Yeah, because I played R2-D2s in that movie and everything.
If you want to get a really good time travel movie, I think that you'd love Art. It's called Primer.
I heard about this. Yes.
Yeah,
I haven't.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, I heard it's really good. Sheldon also says Happy Death Day is Groundhog's Day. It just kind of repeats itself. And I guess it's messing with time, but you guys were saying that that's kind of a time loop versus time travel. Is that correct? Groundhog's Day?
Yeah. He just gets thrown back to the beginning of the day either if he dies or he gets to the end of the day, then he just gets thrown back to the beginning and has to relive it over and over again.
So it does get into time, but it's more like just repeating that same day over and over again, which is actually a form of hell. Could you imagine like your worst day or whatever, just having to do that over and over again? Yeah, I think Happy Death Day just ends more gruesome where she dies each and every time. Yeah.
Now, isn't Assassin's Creed is more or less a time travel story?
Mm-hmm.
Sorta.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more on the lines of temporal viewing rather than time travel, but yeah.
Okay, wait. I'm going to get back to Free Jack. Yes, that is the movie that I'm thinking. I was going to say Mick Jagger's in it and Anthony Hopkins, and it had like there was a race car or something involved. Oh my gosh, I wish I could remember what else was in there. I know I saw it, but man, that's an older movie. I don't remember the plot line. Sorry, Sheldon. I want to talk more about Free Jack, but I don't have a good enough memory for the movie. I know I saw it, and it had something to do with like a race car. And I do remember it because it was weird that Mick Jagger was in the movie. So sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead, you guys.
The Butterfly Effect is a good movie. But we haven't mentioned comics yet. Well, much comics. There's a Batman story where he goes back in time and he saves his parents. And
terrible.
Yeah. What ends up happening is that he lives a good life and he becomes like kind of a stuck-up snob and everything. But Darkseid invades and pretty much takes over the world. And someone's like, dude, you got to go back in time and kill your parents, essentially. So he has to stop himself.
Oh my gosh! So you want to hear a comic book like film time travel story? It is a Sam Hamm movie script, and my roommate was good friends with Sam Hamm. And to give you some kind of like Sam Hamm wrote the first Tim Burton Batman movie, so he's a screenwriter.
Yeah, I remember him doing comics and stuff.
And this will also bring it back to Terry Gilliam. Terry Gilliam was going to do The Watchmen way back when. This is years and years ago, maybe 20, 25 years. I don't know, something like that. And so there was a movie script, and I got to read it. And so the way they end the story, because the end of the comic book, and I talked to Lynn Wein about this, who was the editor on The Watchmen, is Alan Moore, as great as he is, he borrowed the ending from A Twilight Zone. And so that squid showing up, and basically, the idea is create a bigger force than the two forces that are fighting, which would unite those two forces to fight against this ultimate evil now. So it was the height of the Cold War, Russia, America, that's the backdrop of The Watchmen. And this movie script was the same, but since they didn't feel like they should do the same ending, which was kind of it's weird to just kind of ape an ending of like a Twilight Zone or something like that. So what they did is they came up with that it almost becomes a time travel or Elseworlds that gets created. So what happens is Dr. or Ozymandias, what he does is his focus is just on creating a rift in time, like a wormhole that he can basically get the barrel of a high-powered rifle in. And so what he does is he actually does create this like little wormhole thing. And so then he aims the gun at was it John Osterman before he becomes Dr. Manhattan, and he just assassinates him. He just kills him like with a bullet. And so then what happens is, just like what we're kind of talking about with the Marvel Universe, it's highly unlikely to believe that the world wouldn't be changed after Thanos and all that time travel stuff. So what this story says is that it did change the world. So after the gunshot, you see a city, and it's New York City. So like prior to this, like the reality was like the Watchmen comic book reality, where it was all heightened and like had all those weird tech and all those different things in it. So it looked just like the Dave Gibbons comic book, art directionally speaking. But then after John Osterman is shot, the reality goes back to like our reality. It becomes our reality. And so it's like that comic book reality never existed.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, it's really altering the Watchmen story, but I think that it becomes its own original idea. And in ways, I think for a 2-hour film, it becomes cooler. And especially with Terry Gilliam's sensibilities, I know the special effects would have been probably horrible for the time, but with Terry Gilliam directing, I still want to see that movie made, because it is kind of like getting into time travel, like that little rift through time. And then it's just big enough to get a bullet through, And so then by doing that, that reality never existed. So all the technology and all that stuff that Dr. Manhattan brought to society never, ever happened. So then it was just our world. It never became that heightened comic book world.
That's cool. Yeah. You know,
Sheldon says, glory hole. Time.
wow.
It's funny, but it's gross.
So I got one, Art.
Okay.
Here's one that I grew up with and I enjoyed so much, and it was on TV, and that's Quantum Leap.
Ooh, yes. I have friends that love that show, but I have to cop ignorance. I don't remember the show. So you're going to have to lead the way.
So one of the interesting thing is there's a group of scientists. I think they even use like astronaut type stuff, because it's government and whatever. They are trying to build a time machine. They build one, and Sam Beckett, the scientist who is doing the quantum leaping, he theorizes that one can jump through time into the past within their own lifetime, right? We've been talking about rules being set. That was one of the rules they set, was he can jump back and forth in time, but only in his time, only in the time frame that he's been alive in. And I could see some reasons of rooting it in that. I think Todd at some point said something about as far back as the machine itself was created, because you couldn't go backwards in time before it was created. So anyway, he goes back in time, but what he ends up doing this whole series, then he loses the ability to get back into his present, and so he ends up jumping backwards in time, but he doesn't just go himself. He kind of replaces his consciousness into another person in history, and that person changes back to him in the laboratory. And they often talk about having to calm this person down, and I'm not sure if they keep him sedated, but it's interesting though, because it goes through different times. Like he meets Buddy Holly, he bumps into an Elvis, I think, at some point, and all these historical figures or historical events or racism and all these different concepts that happened throughout the 60s and 70s were being brought to this TV series that was going on in the 90s, I guess it was. And so that's what made it interesting, kind of like a Forrest Gumpy, where it's a very nostalgic series to watch with this time aspect, with this. And of course, he doesn't even know they don't know how to control it. They don't know what to do until like the very season finale. They all tie it up into a bow, right? Well,
let me ask you, what is the purpose? Why does he go back in time? Is it always to right some kind of cosmic wrong?
It's so if you do come upon different things where he rights wrongs that are historically significant, usually not historically significant. There's only like, I don't know, 2 or 3 of those. For the most part, it's just something in people's lives. And they have the ability, they have a supercomputer. Of course, this is the 90s. So the supercomputer, they talk to it through like a tablet device that almost looks like a blinking set of Legos. And it's just because they don't know what we have today, right? And it basically scours, they don't have an internet. It's the 90s. It scours media and newspapers and everything that it possibly can to find information on the people and the events, on what happened. And so he tries to guess who he is supposed to help, or what right he's supposed to wrong, or make some historical significant change. And then usually by the end of the show, you find out it's not what the supercomputer or the guys back in the lab have told him. It's usually something that's much more about the human condition, living a good life and helping someone. And then that's when he so-called jumps to another person. And you find out later on that it's his aspect, it's Sam's aspect of wanting to help people and be a positive force of good in the world, in the universe, is really the driving motivation of everything.
Oh, cool. Perth Comics says there was a lost final episode of Quantum Leap, not made but story written. He never made it home otherwise. Did he make it home in the filmed version?
He visited home, and that's when he learned that it was all him. And so he basically jumped back out into the realm of jumping in time and helping people. But when he learned that it was him doing it, it was his own personal choice, and he actually no longer needed the machine to do it, if I remember correctly.
Okay. That sounds cool. I know that you can buy the whole series. I'm going to pick that up. I'm always
Okay.
looking for things to watch. It's weird because there's been periods of my life that I did not have a TV, and it was kind of by choice. And like right now, I don't have a TV, so I have cable and Netflix. I mean, I have a TV, but I don't really watch those things.
Mhm.
And so I should pick that up and watch it because I am kind of dying to see some serialized, like good serialized kind of storytelling. That could be
Look at
fun. How many seasons did it run?
4 or 5, I think.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kevin Tomset has a great point here that he has in the chat. When he became Lee Harvey Oswald, it was absolutely amazing, and it was.
Mm-hmm.
He looked in a
Yeah.
mirror, so since it's really his consciousness that's in
Oh,
the
that's right.
people,
When he looks in the mirror, he sees himself, right?
well, he sees the other person.
Oh, because you're always seeing him as himself, right? But
Yeah.
he's actually somebody else. And then
When
when
you're
you
watching the actor,
it's
yeah.
that other person, right?
So then, when he looks into a mirror, that's when you find out who he is as well. Like in one, he's a young woman, right? A pregnant young girl trying to make it in a world where you're not supposed to have pregnant young girls who are not married. And so, that's when you learn about it, and that's usually the reveal moment. And all of a sudden he's Lee Harvey Oswald. And now what's he gonna do? It's a great episode.
So that's a fun thing you can play upon, right? Because the viewer is always seeing him as the main actor, right? And then there's always some kind of reveal of who he is in that timeline, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's a pretty cool idea. And you could do that as a serialized story. Because I take it that the time travel aspects, like the machine or whatever the technology, is pretty regulated and done by a moral individual or company, right?
Well, you find out that it's him. It's his own moral compass. Otherwise, they can't control the machine, and that's what we've been talking about. How do you limit the time travel so it doesn't become something that destroys the story, but it actually makes the story? And for them, it's the fact that they
machine
can't
is
really
ran by
control
Disney.
What's that?
I'm sorry. I'm saying the machine is ran by Disney.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. They probably own it. They own everything else, right? Well, we kind of covered video games. Do you guys want to add anything else to video games? I don't really play video games, so I don't really have too much of input on that. Oh, Purple Smurf says it's Bakula. That's the actor, right?
Yeah.
Scott
Yes.
Bakula.
Scott Bakula, yeah. My friend absolutely loves that show and loves that dude as an actor, man.
He's a great guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Even
Yes.
though, like, we all love time travel stories, if you've ever seen a fandom of a series with time travel in it, it always causes division. So, as a creator, do you think we should actually just not do time travel because it creates that division?
Well, I think if it's done really well, like I don't know, I haven't seen a lot of backlash to Quantum Leap. Most of the people in the fan base absolutely love it. So I don't know. I don't. Like what would be some examples that you have of like an IP or concept that people are kind of adverse to?
Well, Star Trek is ripe with it. Every single, like, no one understands the time travel stuff all that much.
Right.
And when you try to explain something to them, to anyone, there's always arguments about it. So you got some people that are like, it's good, and this series is good. And then if it's like Star Trek Enterprise, its entire premise is based on like time travel. And if you look at it through the point of view that it's actually happening in like the 31st century rather than the 23rd, then to me it makes sense. But if you try to explain what exactly happens, they're like, no, there's this thing is wrong and that thing is wrong and eventually it just causes people to just argue at each other for the sake of arguing.
Yeah, maybe with Star Trek, I don't really see it with like other things. Like pretty much like if you get into a conversation like say about Terminator, I've any conversation I've ever been in regarding Terminator, people pretty much say the first two movies are canon and they're amazing, and the rest of the movies are shit. You know what I mean? Like there really isn't a whole big debate about that. So I'm not sure, like all time travel, maybe Star Trek. How do you guys feel? How do you feel, Todd? Do you think that anytime you get a time travel type of idea or concept, that there's going to be like the fan base is going to be separated, or it's going to create problems?
Not if you're using as a escapism, escape trope, like it's the MacGuffin, we don't know where to go, but we'll go here. If it feels like that, yeah, I agree. But I've always loved time travel stories.
Well, how do you guys feel about Hot Tub Time Machine? Do you think there's a lot of debate about that? Do you think the fan base is at odds?
Lots of people hate that movie, but I like it. So
no, but I mean, as far as like the time travel rules and stuff, that'd be awesome, man. We should make a whole chat about just like the ins and outs and like the science fiction aspects of Hot Tub Time Machine. I just thought I'd try to get a laugh out of the chat here.
No laughing. None.
No laughing.
Ever.
This is serious. This is all serious. The TARDIS is a MacGuffin?
Yeah, it is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just sort of there, and it acts as a mystery box.
I don't think no. That's not using the term MacGuffin right. A MacGuffin is the thing that runs the story that the characters are trying to achieve or get. It begins the adventure, or it's part of a great adventure. The TARDIS is almost Deus Ex Machina, where if they need something, it's always there for them.
Yeah, but most of the time the story goes something like well, not most of the time, but a lot of the times it goes, well, we traveled here. Oh, look, the TARDIS broke down, or the TARDIS is missing, or the TARDIS was over there, so we have to get back to the TARDIS, or we got to fix the TARDIS, or we got to refuel the TARDIS. So it becomes something of a MacGuffin in a lot of the stories.
Well, Jeffrey STP says the TARDIS is a major character, so there. And he says, somewhat disagree. Let's get Jeffrey in here and debate it.
Like I like Chrono Trigger's rules, where you have different timelines that you can go to, but when you go back in time, everything's always moving forward. So if you're in the present and it goes by an hour, if you go back in the past to one of the past time zones, it's also been an hour.
Yeah, I like those ideas.
You got a plan for that, yeah.
So Bogus Fortune says, I'd rather see multiverse Star Trek mirror episode instead of time travel. I think most time travel stories are boring. Well, you know what? I disagree. Just like
wow.
Yeah, the mirror universes are actually mirror universes. They're not parallel universes. And that's a distinction most people don't get. It's like time inverted universes.
Yeah.
So I'd have to show a graph about how that works, but
oh yeah, let's do that.
That's not fun at all.
Let's get into this. 2 hours into the stream, let's start putting up some graphs and start getting into some real sci-fi aspects, some science, some hard science here. That's always the problem too. I noticed, like when I pitched Chrono Mechanics and trying to sell that around town, and even as a comic book way back when, there would be people like were hardcore time travel, like quantum physics types, and they would ask me questions, and they would really get into it because they just like time travel type of ideas. And I'd say, well, it really doesn't get into any of the scientific aspects of it. It really is just funds and for shits and giggles. You know what I mean? Like if anything, at times we're poking fun at time travel, you know? And so then they just kind of scratch their head and go, okay. And then they walk away. You know, they really wanted to have like some kind of like significance. You know, they wanted to have some kind of real world science attached to it. And so maybe that's what you're talking about, Durakan, where maybe that's the type, maybe that's what you were saying earlier on, where you have like these sci-fi time travel ideas, but there's always, maybe there are the two types that just kind of take it at face value and want a good, fun action adventure time travel story. And then there are some that want to get into more of the science and the reality aspects of time travel. You know, they want to get into those and try to, God, what is the word I'm looking for? Contemplate, you know, the real world applications of time travel.
The funny thing about time travel and Star Trek is like almost all of them exist. Like every single way that you can think of how time travel would exist exists in Star Trek. And then the JJ verse doesn't use any of them, and they're all wrong. Like the way that he uses it. It's like,
did you think that the first movie that JJ did was kind of an interesting way to reimagine Star Trek, though, by bringing in the time travel aspects, which were basically saying that all of the canon, the TV show and the stuff that happened prior did exist, but since this one event happened, we're creating an alternate reality, an alternate version of that reality.
No, that's the lie he gave after the fact. But they had a mandate to erase everything to make it so all that stuff didn't happen. And the way that his time travel idea works,
in the movie, they actually don't they acknowledge like that. Well, there's another Spock in that. There's
he did,
right, but that's because he came back during the initial time travel backwards. He's part of the initial time travel jump, so he'd still be there.
Right. That's why he survived, right?
But really, the way that should have played out, in the way that it would be worked out in Star Trek canon, is that would have created a sub-universe within the black hole or whatever. So it wouldn't actually work out how JJ says, but it would be like a continuity would continue. It just is a really weird sub-universe thing that would happen.
Oh my God.
Rather than a parallel universe.
This is another great example of telling a story and creating reasons for something, right? There's two discussions going on here that one's Durakan's having and one Art is having. Durakan's giving you the discussion based upon what the time travel looks at a level of science and math and whether or not that dimension is a subdimension and how that works into the time thing and how the characters interact with the story through this mechanic. Art, on the other hand, he's talking about the story itself, where the director wanted to make a movie and they used the convenience of time travel to say, we're going to pay homage to another story that was written while we create a totally different new story. And that's where time travel or any of these other sci-fi tropes can just be used because I want to tell a story and I'm going to use whatever the heck I want to. And sometimes I'm going to break the rule just because I want to tell a story a certain way. And that's the difference that you have here. That's what happened with Star Trek. They said we're going to make new movies. Well, how do we not just take all the past movies and say, well, they don't exist? Oh, I know how. We'll have this one little tie-in of this time travel thing happen, and then all the fans are happy, right?
No, none of the fans were happy about
that. Yeah.
They tried.
Zero fans were happy.
I think the reason it worked for me, and I have to confess, is because I'm not a big Trekkie. And I enjoy aspects of it, and I have watched it, but I wouldn't say that I'm a big fan of it. So from just a business storytelling point of view, and I'm only talking about the first movie, the one where they did the Wrath of Khan storyline and stuff, that was really bad. I mean, even from a storytelling standpoint, it was pretty bad. But that first one, I thought from, like Paramount looking after their IP and trying to continue it as a viable, idea with Captain Kirk, Spock, and all those core characters that you know and love. Pretty much trying to reinvent them for a contemporary audience. And I thought that it was a pretty interesting idea. And like I said, for me, not being a huge Star Trek fan, I thought for the most part, the first movie worked and the idea worked. But like I said, I'm not really a guy that has too much invested in Star Trek.
JJ Trek is really interesting because of the fact they got all the casting perfect and all the story wrong. Like, no one likes the story, but they like the casting.
That's true.
But if you want something more relatable to people that like Star Wars, the time travel aspect is sort of like the hyperdrive aspect in the newer movies, where like in Rise of Skywalker, there's at the very beginning, you have them do skipping, which isn't even possible within like the Star Wars canon.
Right.
And they do it in, I think, Solo too, because you can't hyper jump at any point that you want. You have to be at a certain point because of the way that it works. There's pathways.
There's a fixed point that they have to go to, right? So there's calculations to actually hit a actual destination and maneuver.
And there's no such thing as faster than light travel in Star Wars. There's faster than light at a regular drive. That's what hyperdrive is for. So you can go faster than light.
Right.
But there's no faster than light or almost as fast as light travel. But that's what the entire second movie of the new trilogy was about.
Right.
Cool.
Here's one taking a completely different spin, going over towards what Art has with chronomechanics. If you've ever read the series from Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or The Long Dark Tea Time with the Soul, you've got time jump going on in those. And there, you don't even try to explain or understand how the time travel works or how it affects different things.
Yeah.
You just follow along the story because it's an interesting story. It's fun. The mechanics of it are fun. I mean, in the end, they end up building. I think it's the infinite drive of the spaceship.
Drive.
By giving it a hot cup of tea is the final ingredient, right? A good strong cup of tea.
Right.
So it's just and there it's just fun. Time like the restaurant at the end of the universe where they watch the universe blow up and then they jump back a few minutes and then you can on the hour you can watch the universe blow up at the end of the universe.
That's a great idea.
It's just and you can and it's a highly expensive. It's a hugely expensive endeavor to even get enough money to go to this restaurant. But the thing is, you go ahead and put a few pennies in an investment account, far in the past, and then when you take your time jump to the future, you now have the millions or billions that you need to afford the restaurant.
Yeah, and it's funny because the more I talk about Chrono, the more I'm starting to realize that the two things that I really loved, that's what chronomechanics is. It really is Time Bandits meets the Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide stuff.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Yeah.
They actually do explain it in Hitchhiker's Guide by going, it's infinite in probability, which means it's not likely to happen. So
that doesn't explain anything.
It's like anything can happen. Oh well.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a silly idea, but it's fun. Yeah. Do you guys want to start wrapping this up? I'm going through. I wanted to get to Kevin. Let me see if I can find Kevin because I think he asked this twice. But I'm not really. I kind of remember the. Wait. Is this it?
Series Sapphire and Steel.
Yeah, but there was another one where he mentions like time after time, or some other TV show.
There Will Be Time. Someone mentioned The Man Who Folded Himself.
I'm trying to find it now. But anyways, I think it was an old TV series, and he said it was. What is that director's name? He did a lot of TV, and he did all those those movies where people were like disaster films. Irwin Allen. It was like
the Poseidon Adventure and stuff.
Yeah, and the Towering Inferno and Earthquake.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Kevin, I demand you repeat yourself.
Yes, please. Oh, Time Tunnel. Bogus says Time Tunnel. So do you guys remember this show? It sounds like it was a TV show.
It was a 1960s TV show, but I don't know anything about it other than they had this it was a military thing, and it was agents that are going into the past, and the way they got to the past was this big machine with like a one of those hypnosis spinning things, and you walk into that and it creates a tunnel, and you go through, and that's the time tunnel.
Okay.
That's all I know about it. So
like Dr.
Yeah. Okay.
Like what Dr. Evil had.
Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Evil had one of those spinny things and put on it.
Yeah, so Bogus Fortune says it was Irwin Allen, and then Kevin says it wasn't me. So I'm probably just making this up then. Time travel, or time tunnel, I'm making it up. TV show The Voyagers. What the hell is this? TV show The Voyagers. Almost forgot about that one.
Never heard of it? There's a major story event in. Yes, Sliders is good.
What's that, Tom? Or Todd, I mean?
Sliders
Todd,
is a good show.
Todd, were you saying something? We lost Todd.
Todd was saying that Sliders is a bit like time travel.
Yeah.
Wait, okay, so now Todd's talking. Go ahead, Todd.
For a couple seasons, Sliders was a really good show, and then they lost, like, cast members left, and it continued, and it got a little off the rails, but they were always trying to find their way back to their Earth. And sometimes they'd land on other Earths in other multiverses where time was different, and time didn't move the same way. I don't know that they ever changed the year they were traveling, but they were always changing planets Earth.
Okay.
Kind of string theory,
I like that. Okay, so Wilson clarifies the Voyagers, and he says a member of a league of time travelers and a boy travel through time repairing errors in history. Interesting. And then Kevin clarifies it wasn't time tunnel, it was time. So what is time other than redundancy? I don't even remember this show. Was it a TV show or a movie? I think it was a TV show, right?
No clue.
Oh, wait. Oh, now I'm completely confused. So Kevin says that, and then now Kevin says, time tunnel was me. I thought you were talking about something else. But then you said time. Now what is time?
Yeah, we're on our own time loop now.
Yeah, we're looping back and forth. Yeah. Oh, Kevin, you blew my freaking mind. I thought I was making shit up.
See, now we can take that two ways, Kevin. No typo is either no typo or no typo. The comma is important, man.
Yeah, Kevin knows that I'm getting tired, and he's just gonna start messing with my head. Oh, wait! Oh, this is cool. Geekart says, "What about Peabody and Sherman? Holy crap, that's a good call, man. The Wayback Machine, right?
Wayback Machine.
That's pop culture stuff, man. That is in the zeitgeist.
Calvin and
the internet website.
There's a website, a Peabody Sherman.
No, the Wayback Machine.
Oh, the Wayback Machine. Man, I gotta bring a talking dog into Chrono Mechanics. Holy shit!
Then there's Samurai Jack, where the villain throws him to the future so that the villain can just control all of time without the hero. But of course, the hero is now trying to figure out how to get back to the past to defeat him in the first place. It's fun.
Okay, let's go over Sliders because it's come up a couple times. Did you guys cover this already?
Oh no, but it's not actually time travel. It's alternate histories.
Okay.
It's alternate dimension and alternate histories that they're traveling between.
Well, that
It's
was
a really good
TV
show.
show.
Really
It was a
dimension
TV
it
show,
was.
right? Sliders.
So yeah, it was string theory. There were multiple Earths, and they kept trying to jump back to their Earth. And,
Yeah, they kept on trying to, but
right.
things
They
they
would
couldn't.
get on an Earth that would be different than theirs, and always end up sort of in trouble and had to figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, at one point they thought they made it back, but at the beginning of the next season, they're like, nope, this isn't it. Or they decided to leave anyways. And eventually, I know that it was eventually discovered that their Earth wasn't their original Earth. It was another Earth that was taken over by the Cro-Mags, which is like another alternate universe where humans hadn't developed, but the Cro-Magnon man had evolved.
They're the Morlocks.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm.
Well, very cool. We have King Crow messing with things again. Take a time tunnel to time.
So on a final, this might be final. I don't know. Maybe it won't be final. But I want to take a moment because I have deep Christian roots. So taking time travel into the aspect of Christianity and a God who has in that particular religion set forward an idea that you have a sinful people, a creature created that can be sinful, and then a savior that saves them. How, if you have time travel existing in this idea, right? I think within, of course, a created space-time continuum, I think that you could never have time travel, or we could never develop it, even though they talk about it. They talk about string theory. They talk about being able to harness the atoms and the super colliders and stuff. I don't think it's possible. I think at some point it would completely be stopped because of how it would change, like we've been talking about this whole time, how it changes the aspect of humanity itself.
I think it would be. I think time travel would be humanity's doom. That's
okay. Yeah,
I covered it from a moralistic and just a meaning of life idea. I think it would just doom us as a society. It's a fun idea to talk about. We can be entertained by it because I think it's a really cool idea in a wish fulfillment type of way. Like, wouldn't you like to go back and see your family? Like check this out. Okay, there's what is I want to say De Palma, but it wasn't. That Peggy Sue Got Married movie. Oh, who did that? I forget who directed that, but that's kind of like one of those really nostalgic time travel ideas where she goes back in time and she gets to meet her mother, but she gets to meet her mother, when she was in high school. So it's kind of like she goes back to her high school years. So she gets to re-experience all those things again, like things that you wish you could go back in time and see your parents in their prime, see what life was like not just see it in photographs, but actually feel it, smell it, touch it. It's all tangible. And that show, I think that movie really touches. I think it's the best nostalgic time travel story I've ever seen, other than A Wonderful Life. I think A Wonderful Life.
That's a good point. Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I think A Wonderful Life is a time travel movie as well. But like Peggy Sue Got Married. God, who is the director? I can't remember now. Oh, Francis Ford Coppola. Thank you, Wilson. And it's just brilliant. It's just a brilliant movie because, just think about like as a wish fulfillment idea, if you could go and just re-experience all these things and then it starts off like it's like she just kind of like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, it's kind of cool. But then there's also the drama that happens, like there's things that she knows that went bad, but she knows they're going to go bad before they go bad, so then she starts thinking like, maybe I can change my future by changing the past since I'm here, that type of thing. And it's really good, but it's almost like she wants to doom her relationship with her husband, the one that that she's kind of paying the price for in the future, in the present time. Like he stepped out on her and she's really hurt, and it's fresh in the story in the present day. So when she goes back in time, she kind of has that emotion, you know what I mean? Like you cheated on me, you hurt me, and then he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? We're like in the throngs of love, like we just kind of like at the heat of like our relationship, the high points, and then she's coming from like a 30 whatever year old woman's point of view, and he's like 17, 18 years old, you know what I mean? It's great. It's kind of like Back to the Future, but really done nostalgically, like emotionally, like it really gets into those emotions and things. I think it's brilliant. Yeah, I forgot about that movie.
Wow.
What do you guys think about the Marvel story that I think they just recently started going on with what's her name? Moira M something, Maggie, Charles Xavier's friend, where her power, mutant power that they just discovered and revealed to people was that she actually goes back in time every time she dies, the beginning of her birth, and she relives history, and she's trying to change something.
All right, I got to derail this for a minute. Hey, listen, Sheldon, I disagree. How dare you, man? Go on. I was just wanting to throw that joke out there.
Moira McTaggart. Do you guys know anything about that?
Is this in the comics like currently?
Apparently. I don't know much about it.
Dude, I don't read Marvel comics anymore. I wish I could say I did, because I loved Marvel comics, but for various reasons, I can't bring myself to picking one up.
It sounds doable, though, because it goes back to Groundhog Day, but instead of one day, she's got her whole life to do whatever it is over to fix it.
Yeah, she's trying to fix the entire like human race or history or whatever. And she has a limited amount of time to do it, like limited amount of lives to do it in, apparently.
Yeah, Perth Comics says it's Moira McTaggart. Yeah.
Right.
And then we have,
once again,
this goes back to Todd's. I just want to throw this out there. This goes back to Todd's, I think, our first go around, which was, what is it? Time After Time, or Somewhere in Time?
Somewhere in Time.
Yeah. With Christopher Reeves and Jane Seymour. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, going back to that spirituality aspect, and you touched on it great on that, because it then takes the whole reason for existence, the reason on going forward, even trying to do things with your life. What does that mean for you to do things? If time can be changed, even if you can't do it, if someone else can somewhere else in the world, I think that opens up that that meaning of existence, meaning of life, and the why we do things, completely bashes that apart. And so you just couldn't have that. And I think what is that you said? It was just not possible for us to do.
Well, the way that time is in the physics is that you're not changing anything. You're actually looking at like 12 or 13 dimensional thing where all possibilities play out. So you're actually looking at like a crystal sphere, and everything's set, and it's just because of something about the our particular point of view, like for some reason we can perceive time and be like considered sentient, but nothing's actually happening.
So now you're going back to A Christmas Carol, where you're just observing.
Sorta. I mean, regardless of what we're seeing or observing or whatever, it's not happening. It's just one just big structure, and for some reason we're experiencing it. The entire idea of experience is weird.
What is the it that you're talking about? What is the it? We're experiencing
time, universe, everything.
Okay.
Like there is no reason why we should be experiencing if we understand physics correct.
And that's you're getting the goodness of everything. If you could go back and observe but not change time, well, now you have A Christmas Carol, and you do eventually learn all those small events that lead up to the grandiose nature of It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Well, no, then you get into the problem of predestination, which is also against the God theory of Christianity, which is you have a will, because in this perspective of time, there is no changing anything. There is just you perceiving things.
But you don't know what's in the future. That's the difference.
Right, but the future is all set in place too.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, everything's already like there. It's just one like structure that already exists, unchanging.
Not according to Charles Dickens, because Scrooge then changes his life so that he doesn't end up a miserly man in a grave that no one cares about.
That's kind of divine intervention too. Like there's a supernatural aspect to A Christmas Carol that we haven't even got into. So it's not like a science construct, the time travel. It's more spiritual. It's more, you know what I mean? It's more on that level. It's like the fates entering in the spirit world. You know, it's more supernatural than it is science. It is time travel, but it's more supernatural based because it's kind of like God or a divine presence that is trying to save this man and giving him examples of how he could change things. And it doesn't just better his life, it betters the people around him too. So the greater good is served by saving this man. And God, it's so amazing. But I think
Sorry,
it's a great story.
Someone should write that down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories. But I think that kind of gets more into supernatural than actual like science itself. Because how do you explain that? You know, these spirits come back. You know, like even A Wonderful Life is more spiritual based. It's kind of time travel, but it's not science. You know, it's more like God intervening in this guy's life. It's kind of like giving him a second chance. Pulling him back from the abyss.
And you know, it's funny though too, in A Christmas Carol or many of the versions that I've seen, when he's in the past, there are times when he tries to say or do something to alter it, and then of course the spirit says, so you're only an observer here. You know, you can't change this, but he wants to, because he understands, hey, that's the girl I let go. Hey guy, you know, grab a hold of her now. You're gonna lose her.
Yeah, the frustration of all these missed opportunities, you know, so he gets frustrated and forgets that he can't interact. And that's part of the great pathos of the character and the emotion, because his instinct is to start trying to interact and to change things. But the great thing about why there's a past, present, and future, and why is because it takes all of those things to change that man. Because if one of those things had happened and he got to see it, it wouldn't be enough. That dude had to hit rock bottom, which was his own mortality. You know, that guy had to see this whole thing play through before he was willing to change. I mean, really significantly change.
Yeah.
And that's the great part about that story too, is that dude has to hit rock bottom. Like those spirits, they bring him to rock bottom of you know, like his life, humanity, you know, all those things. And he gets to start seeing how he could have helped all these different people throughout, you know, these moments in his life, and didn't, you know.
Wow.
It's pretty, that story is so freaking cool. I've never read the book, but I've read like Cliff Notes on the story, and there's a lot of other things like Marley, you know, that chain.
Yeah.
And when he leaves that mortal realm and goes back, it's not just Marley. There's this whole spiritual realm that are all bound by those chains that they forged in life. Because when I saw them, you know, the movie, because I really liked the George C. Scott version of the movie. But when you watch the movie or any of the adaptations of it, you just think it's just Marley. Like Marley's the example. But Marley lives in a world of people like that. Like he wanders the earth with a ton of people that are just like him. So think about the damnation of that that guy's not in he's not alive, he's not quite dead, and he just walks the earth with all these other people with these chains on him, seeing these examples and seeing humanity move on without them, and seeing how they could have changed things, or how they could have made people's lives better. God, that thing's so good.
Wow, the last 8 minutes. The last 8 minutes of this conversation, I think, were the entire payoff for 2 hours of talking about time.
I just want to use that as a quote. So good, I read the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, because I don't have time to read the book, man. Otherwise, I'd sit down and I would actually read the book. But yeah, I did like one of those like Google, because the family watches it every year, and the George C. Scott version is one of my wife's favorites as well. So after we watched the movie one night, we were like, let's just see what what the writer was thinking, and some of the more like inside aspects, kind of the more trivia that went on in the story and things. And so yeah, we started getting into that. It was a blast.
Really, what we've come to from the beginning of this 2 hours, we spent talking about time travel and how fun it is and what it means and how it develops into a story, and why you even want to get into these stories of these things. And what we end up with now is the humanity of a human condition, and some person who has to get better so he can help everyone else around him also get better. And it goes all the way back to the Christmas Carol, which we talked about at the very beginning, written in, what do we say, 1814 or 1819. The very first time travel type of a story set in place this idea. And here we've now gone for hundreds of years now talking about different stories of time travel, all in that human condition, and usually it's to try to change the world, to make it a better place, or fix something that's been wrong. And Christmas Carol did that. That's just amazing.
Yeah, and it's an example of what could be, for better or worse, because sometimes it's apocalyptic, sometimes it's a shining, amazing utopia. Go ahead.
If you look at the Christmas Carol, it kind of wraps up everything that you want to do with time travel, and it expresses our humanity and the fact that, like, when we look at the past, we express regret towards that past and want to change it, and we want to, like, that's what we do as humans. But then also, being able to travel into the future is sort of like us going, we want to see our predictions and our actions in their concrete form, what they're actually brought to fruition. And that's another human desire. So you got these two elements of humanity playing off against each other with time travel. So that's a really interesting thing to come to, understand about what actually is time travel and why it's good or why it's bad.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't get so hung up on let's create time travel so we can actually manifest that in the real world. I think these things are better as just like constructs to do these cautionary tales, or to do these stories that can uplift the human condition. It's really just a series of what ifs, what if this happened, what if that happened, for better or for worse. And in the case of Christmas Carol, you have both. And in Wonderful Life, you have both. You get to see the worst aspects, and then you get to see the best aspects. So yeah, this is a really good place to go out. But I just want to say,
time to kill everyone.
It's time to kill everyone. Is Jeffrey S.P. And when he says slow down, Art. Space-time continuum yields infinite realities, and that if there's any rule in chronomechanics, is that time is all happening at the same time. Like 1940 is happening at the same time as 2015. They're just different locations. So in chrono, the only real construct in that is in stone is that all of this, all time is happening simultaneously. You know what I mean? So when they go back to 1880, it's just as viable as the present time. So it's like infinite Earths, infinite timelines, this type of idea. But
And remember not to touch your past self because you'll destroy both of yourselves.
is that true? Is that absolutely true? I'll make sure I don't do that. Yeah, I don't want to do that. But I just wanted to get to Jeffrey STP's. Oh wait, we have Skits Comics says love the stream, guys. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Wesley Haymaker. Yeah, that's the main problem. That's a new name. I haven't seen that in the Pontificators chat yet. Very good. So, you guys have any parting shots? You want to plug anything? How about you, Draken?
Plug. My book will be coming out in February, so nothing to plug at the moment.
Dude, February's right around the corner, man. Plug away. Jeez.
Yeah. In February, I plan to launch a crowdfunder, probably on Kickstarter first, but I'm still waiting to see how that plays out. It's essentially something like it, Men in Black combined with Hitman Reborn combined with Dead Like Us, and it plays off the whimsy of if you've ever gone to get, like, a package is coming and you're right by the door, and you hear the knock on the door and you open it and the delivery dude is gone. It's like, how the heck is that even possible? It plays on that idea at first.
That's cool. Yeah. So that's coming out early February, late February?
Probably late February.
Well, cool. Well, I think you should figure out the platform and start building this thing now because February is going to come before you know it, brother.
Well, the only reason I'm waiting is because I have to try. Like, I didn't know that Kickstarter needs a bank account first, because with Indiegogo you can set it up afterwards. So
well, maybe you should go Indiegogo then.
Yeah. Well, I want to do both.
Oh, you greedy SOB.
Well, different audiences.
You're double dipping.
Gotta go for all the audiences.
No, I think it's great. I'm just giving you.
He's Rick Gervaising you.
I'm Rick. Yeah, we're bringing it back down to the beginning, which is this funny quote right here, which is finish how we began. Now the stream can be watched on a loop. Yes, for all eternity, man. Well, how about you, Todd? Parting shot.
I'm time travel is not like we've had episodes where we're trying to talk about comics and what we can do and things like that. Just time travel is just one of those things that appears in all our media that we like, and I've always been a big fan of those things, but you can't. It's really hard to wrap your brain around it. Whether possible or not, it doesn't really matter. But wrapping your brain around time travel is really tricky, because you know how when who was it that draws a line, then he draws a divergent line from the line, and you're like, how can you even get back to the original? You really can't. Whatever you diverted, and just by meeting one person, you'd never be able to get back to the original timeline. And that is never really explained very well in any of these movies. You know what I mean? Because you can't exist inside of a bubble, right? So if you divert the timeline by doing something, so you end up in somewhere else. As soon as the first person you meet, you've changed that timeline forever. There's no going back, because that person now has that memory of meeting you. Right? So there's really no we got to fix the timeline. I don't think it's possible.
Dude, the top of my brain just blew out of my skull. This is some deep shit, man. You're getting me thinking too much, right? Yeah. I agree. Yeah, it's some crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I think it's infinitely fun to talk about, because there's all these different possibilities. And then, I think we did a great job kind of hitting on all the things, even morality of time travel and the science aspects and just the sheer entertainment of it as well. So do you have any books or do you have a book coming out in February to compete with the Drakens?
In February, no. My book is I'd say at least 4 or 5 months out.
Okay.
Has Florida Man already come out?
Has what?
Florida Man, isn't that the last book you were working on?
Florida Man never really found a publisher, so that, where Mike is with that. I mean, the novel came out, so the story of those two characters is there. And it just never, to be honest, Florida Man never seemed like a comic that would be something a lot of people would buy. I think you'd want to. I think there's certain elements in it that you'd want to know about, like. But really, what he was doing was taking all these articles and all these things that actually happened in Florida, and just attributing them to these two dunderheads, and that's what he was doing. So,
yeah, like Forrest Gump in Florida.
That sounds perfect for a webcomic. I don't know why you guys wouldn't just do that, like a 4-panel webcomic.
Because the book isn't as a comic, it wasn't high comedy, right? It was situational. Like, you'd find the situation funny because it's bizarre, but there's nothing in the book that's like trying to make you laugh. Like, I don't know, Art, do you remember Justice League, right? There was a period where they took the Justice League book, like Justice League International and Justice League, and they were writing them comedically.
Yeah, the DeMatteis, Keith Giffen stuff. Yeah.
And there was Adam Hughes that was drawing some of the issues and stuff. Really great stuff that sometimes would make you laugh out loud, even though it was a little bit tropish and stuff like that. Like, Guy Gardner never called anybody their real name, and so that played over and over in other issues. But he always had a nickname or something smart alecky that he'd call somebody. So Florida Man is not like that. It's just like, oh my God, that's so bizarre, that's funny. And
I'll tell you what Florida Man does have: a brilliant cover. Who drew that, Todd?
cover, the book actually is done really well. And
that cover is awesome. That's the one you drew, that right? Where the guy's riding the alligator and it's flying over, it's like jumping over the car.
That's what Mike wanted, by the way. He said, hey, can you do this? And I was like, well, you don't tell Mike Barron that you can't do something. So all I could think of was like Slim Pickens, right, in Dr. Strangelove. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do Slim, because he wanted the alligator jumping over cars. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do Slim Pickens style, guy on an alligator, like yeehaw, right?
Like rodeo style, yeah, riding that alligator.
And that's all I had to go. Like, that's really what I did.
I'll tell you right now, like I had a geek out moment, Todd, when you told me that, or when I found out that you had done that cover, because that cover it will forever be burned into my memory banks as just being the weirdest, coolest, and it's drawn very well, like cover, but it's just so freaking weird and odd. But it's drawn very serious. It's not like you said. It's more matter of fact and situational, and you're just like, this dude is riding the back of a giant alligator jumping over a car, with a cowboy hat over his hat, his head going, yeehaw.
I gotta tell you, I've done some cool things in my career, but that really gave me one of those moments, because when I introduced myself to people I wanted to meet when I went to a convention, and they like, oh, what are you doing? I go, well, I draw, and then I would pull up my phone and show them the Florida Man cover, because it was really the latest thing that I had done right before going there. And they go, oh my God, I've seen that. And
yeah, lead with that, man. Because it was, for some reason, it was all over social media. So maybe it was Mike Barron posting it, or you. I don't know who was, but I saw it everywhere.
I did a lot of posting it, but the fact that certain people like Paul Mounts and Greg Capullo had seen it just floored me.
I've seen it.
It's almost iconic at this point. I actually will reserve iconic, and I will forever know you, Todd, as that guy that drew that cover until you trump it, until you actually do something that takes its place. Yeah. So then, DeWolf, what do you have in the works? I know you have a book coming up.
Oh. So my book's I had to move it back a little bit because life, and but that's okay, because I see it as actually a positive move at this point. on some of the things that kind of are available or that's occurred to me that I can do with the book. So it's going to be moved back a little bit further back than I wanted it, but I think it's all together in the long run. It's going to be a positive move through time, and which of course this what we've done tonight and how we've unpacked this concept of time and what it means into a story and what it means to humanity is kind of what happened a year and a half ago when my timeline diverged into independent comics, and I said, hey, I want to now do that. I want to look at what humanity means to people through stories, how the humanity of time, traveling through time, affects our humanity. So I'm doing that, of course, with elves, and this book of elves has a spiritual backdrop, much like I guess C.S. Lewis or Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Yet, of course, it's very character driven, and what these people have to do to defeat evil, right? In its simplicity form. So that's going to come out later on. And but in the meantime, I'm going to be here at Pontificators having great shows like this.
Sweet. I know last time we talked, either you were thinking of doing a pre-launch or there was a pre-launch. Is there a pre-launch for your new project?
There's a pre-launch, and it comes to this point when you have to make a change. What do you do? Do you end the pre-launch? Do you sort of hang on it and you just leave it open? And so I'm kind of there on leaving it open, and I because I'm still able to get a lot of build up the email list and then get out the information to those people who have decided to get on the email list. It's if you go to Indiegogo and you just look up Book of Elves, but you leave off the final E, so it's ELVS. You're going to find a Book of Elves, and you can sign up for the email, find out what's going on, see where we're going to go with that in the future. And I may do something a little bit different than I initially planned, which will end up being a bigger product in the long run. So more on that later. And of course, to find out more, get on the email list, and you'll get those newsletters.
Yeah, keep us posted on that. It sounds really interesting. And so check out and sign up for the pre-launch, because it really does help, DeWolf. I'm glad to hear that you're keeping it open, because the more you can get people involved in it, the earlier it's better. It's way better, because when you launch, then you kind of already have people that you can contact and that know about the product, and getting people in early is the key to success on these Indiegogos. So good luck with that, man. It sounds like you're going strong on it, and maybe the longer period of time is a blessing. It'll give you more time to work it out and to get people interested in the new book that is coming. So I have Chrono Mechanics. It is in demand right now, and I think we're maybe 700 or 800 away from the next stretch goal at 30K. So we had a little bit of a rally today. Actually, we had a great rally today, and we got a lot of backers. So thank you to everybody that's backed. And if you're still thinking about backing, we are in demand. So there is a little bit of time. So, you can come back and you can back this book. It'll probably stay in demand until we go to print. So at least a couple months there. So thanks to all that have supported Chrono, and please come by and check it out. So thanks to everybody. This was an amazing Pontificators. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to the crew, the Pontificators crew. I'm putting up gang signs right now. You can't see. I'm going, yay.
Man, what a liar. Saying that it's $700 away.
What am I saying?
$698.
Oh, well. Well, thank you for clarifying. Yeah. We're getting there, man. And that stretch goal is going to be 6 additional story pages, which will be killer. And I have some great ideas how to fill those 6 pages. So thanks again, and you guys are a blast, man. I think this Pontificators is we're finding our niche, we're finding our rhythm here, and we're building a fan base. So I think this is working, man. This is cool. All right. So everybody have a good night, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Take care.
Good night.
Goodbye, people.